PodCastle, episode 734 for Tuesday the 10th of May 2022. An incomplete account of the case of the bird talker of Yaros by Eliana Castriani. Read by Alethea Contis and rated PG-13 with a content warning for war, imprisonment and mentions of torture. Good morning, good day, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and I am delighted to present for your enjoyment an incomplete account of the case of the bird talker of Yaros by Eliana Castriani, read by Alethea Contis. This episode was first published at Fireside Fiction, and, again, content warnings for war, imprisonment and mentions of torture. Eliana Castriani is a writer, poet and oral storyteller from Greece. A cultural geographer by training, Eliana tells stories from the margins of history and the far futures of the Anthropocene. Their written work has appeared in Clarkesworld, Strange Horizons, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Fireside, The Stinging Fly and elsewhere. Follow them on Twitter at Nomadological and find out more, including links to more of their published fiction, at elianacastriani.com. New York Times bestselling author Alethea Contis is a princess, storm chaser and Saturday songwriter. Author of over 20 books and 40 short stories, Alethea is the recipient of the Jane Yolen Midlist Author Grant, the Scribe Award, the Garden State Teen Book Award and two-time winner of the Gellit Burgess Children's Book Award. She's been twice nominated for both the Andre Norton Nebula and the Dragon Award. She was an active contributor to the Fireside Sessions, a benefit EP created by Snow Patrol and her fellow Saturday songwriters during lockdown 2020. Alethea also narrates stories for multiple award-winning online magazines and contributes regular YA book reviews to NPR. Born in Vermont, she currently resides on the Space Coast of Florida with her teddy bear, Charlie. Find out more about Princess Alethea and her wonderful world at aletheacontis.com. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and they're trying to stop it getting to you.
An incomplete account of the case of the bird talker of Yaros by Eliana Castriani. Narrated by Alethea Contis. Panayotis M. Interviewed by Eleni Haji, November 1975. When I first saw her, she was covered in wings. Seabirds flocked to her as if she was honey and they were the bees. Watching from the men's prison, we could always tell which was her cell window by the cluster of flapping, squawking gulls. The guards were furious. They would thrash around to drive the birds away, or even keep her locked in isolation in windowless rooms. But I know she still spoke to them, all of them. A chirrup here, a cry there. You can't stop them. Birds carry words, my father used to say. Their wings are speech. Packages and other mail from relatives are not accepted given that the inmates are not in need of additional food items or other material. Pavlos Totomis, Minister of Public Order. May 9th, 1967. Chrysula K. Diary excerpt. April 21st, 1972. 3 months in prison, 5 years of the Colonel's regime. April 21st is my birthday, you know. 5 years ago, on my birthday, we became this unfree country. My father disappeared immediately. Mother was smarter. She knew our family was too political, too vocal, and that she had to look after us. They came one day at the school where she worked and took her. She was tortured for a week in Perissos, yet never revealed our whereabouts. I wasn't smart like her or my siblings. I itched to join the anti-junta action. I was caught along with other students after a failed bombing attempt. We had targeted the foreign cars, the French embassy, to make them do something, to force them to act and stop looking the other way like nothing's happening to us. And here I am, earned myself 3 months and counting in Yaros, the Death Island, on a steady diet of humiliation and deprivation. The food I can handle, the beatings too, but not the letters. They're taking our letters. No prison was ever so cruel. Greece and France have different approaches to democracy. This, however, is completely irrelevant because every state is free to govern in different ways. The French government has adopted the principle of not interfering with other countries' internal affairs. French State Secretary of Foreign Affairs during a visit to Greece, January 27, 1972. Panayotis M. Interviewed by Sotirios Iacovidis, 1986. The island was a place forgotten by the gods. Time had stopped. Life had stopped. A place where everything was gray and dry. The little we saw of it, you could say it was like every other island, really. Rocky, low vegetation, blazing sun, and a smell of death everywhere. It was small, just big enough for a red brick prison and little else. Can you imagine a tiny island that has a giant prison on it and nothing else but rocks? It's like a prison within a prison. The junta never wanted the outside world to know what they were doing. Many knew, of course. All the world's elite, the governments, the oligarchs. All these had excellent relations with the junta, business deals and so forth. But they all had to maintain appearances, you see. So they hid everything out of sight, sent people to islands like Yaros and Makronisos. Foreign reporters begged to be allowed there, and never once were they, not in all the 7 years. Many foreign governments pretended on the surface to disapprove of the human rights abuses, while in the meantime did business under the table. They were crafty with the image they showed in public. The regime fed people cheap entertainment, pretty movie stars, that sort of thing. The same people numbed and put to sleep by those cheap tricks will tell you that the 7-year regime was not so bad, that it was okay, that we didn't go hungry like we did in the Civil War. But for us who dared speak up against it, torture, exile. I spent 6 months in Yaros. My father fought with the communists in the war with the Germans and in the Civil War, so I was on the list, of course. Everyone with a family history like mine would be. They came to me quietly in the cafeteria where I used to go and seek work, because my cousin and I painted walls those years. They took me to Perissos. They insulted me, stripped me naked, blindfolded me so I couldn't see what they were doing. They aimed for the most vulnerable parts, those that hurt most, your armpits, your genitals. I stayed there for maybe a few weeks. Then it was Yaros for me. Yaros was the death island. And Kera Thalasini was what kept our minds together. Your wife gave birth to a baby girl. Kera Thalasini said so. That's what someone whispered to me one morning. By word of mouth, the news had reached me. Whispers, bird whispers. I will never forget those words, the tears they brought to my eyes. You know, they took me when she was 4 months pregnant, and now I was a father, a girl. I kept crying, the salt of my tears stinging my eyes. A girl! Did she have my wife's eyes, her dark hair? Would I be there to see her make her first steps, to hold her in my hands? Would she grow up in a better world than the one she was born into? Every morning I asked myself these questions. Every morning I watched the red bricks of Kera Thalasini's cell, with the gulls always loitering around the windows, and thanked her. I never had a chance to talk to her, but even to this day I thank her. The communist inmates, always working against Greece, want you to visit the prison with the purpose of using us to internationally defame their own country. We will allow journalists to talk to them only when they stop waiting for help from foreigners, and only when they learn to believe in Greece and to think as Greeks. Brigadier General Stylianos Patakos, Minister of Interior, June 6, 1967. Chrysoula K. Diary excerpt, August 29, 1972. It's true what they say of the old lady that talks to birds. She arrived a little over 2 months ago. Some say a sparrow lives inside her clothes, whispering witchcraft to her, but I haven't seen it. Although I heard what she told Irini the other day. Your brother was found. He's safe back home. When Irini asked her how she knew, she only said, Your letters, they're tossing them in the sea. My birds pick them up. I didn't want to believe in her witchcraft, but I did. It's the only thing left to believe here, at the end of the world. I begged her, any word of mother, of my sisters? Yesterday she finally told me. Antigone got married. She smiled a bird smile, showing me yellowed teeth. 3 words, 3 small words that brought my sister's face in my mind, her sweet smile and dimples. My dear people, wait for me. I'm coming home. Friday, lentil soup, 140 grams. Olives, 50 grams. Boiled potatoes, 400 grams. 1 lemon. Thalassini V. Transcription of her story as recorded by an anonymous inmate. April 1973. First it was the blackbirds. They came to me, asked for food and so on. Then the magpies followed me around demanding trinkets. I gave them colorful beads or pieces of shiny foil. Little bird girl, they called me. Village folk had no problem with me. They liked it. Thought I was gifted by God. I gathered the birds around me and away from their crops. I brought them good luck. When I went to the city, I was 18. 1920, September. Hidden. Pigeons, those little rats with wings, they were everywhere. They rule in the cities. They just flocked to me and told me everything. Everything. So one day, in 1969, they told me of the soldiers near my house. Told me where these people took my daughter. I went after her. And still I haven't... Birds couldn't tell me. And the police wouldn't. Ended up here, on the Death Island, because my late husband and now my daughter were both on the lists of communists. I wasn't tortured. They just shipped me quietly here. Maybe they thought I was becoming a problem to them, but I was happy when they sent me here. Maybe my girl is here. I'm still asking the birds where she is, but they just... None of them knows anymore. I will make an effort, even if they don't change their minds, to improve their living conditions as much as possible. For example, to allow them to stay in smaller, less crowded cells. They are getting fed well, of course. They have a doctor and everything they need. I will try to make their stay as comfortable as possible because I am human too. But I will not allow them to become beasts under communist orders. Because if they turn into beasts and leave the cage, I will be obliged to shoot them, as the police shoot the lion that leaves the zoo's cage and threatens the lives of citizens. Colonel Yorgos Papadopoulos, Prime Minister, March 1st, 1968. Chrysula K. Diary excerpts. May 24th, 1973. Kara Thalassini has died. We're crushed. They took her 3 days ago. They strapadoed her for hours, those bastards. An old woman. For hours. I can barely believe it. They did it to me for maybe 20 minutes in Perissos, and I know that my shoulder will never recover. And you can't keep someone hanging from their wrists for more than an hour. They will die. They will fucking die. Did she bother them so much? 'Cause they don't torture in Yaros. They just let the isolation kill you. Did she bother them so much then? Did her birds remind them how, no matter how they lock us in, we're free? We're always flying free? There's no one to claim her body. No relatives. We asked to bury her on the beach. I hope those bastards will grant us this at least. May 25th, 1973. We said goodbye to Kara Thalassini. I will never forget this day. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of birds came to claim her body. Birds have no soul, someone said, but they came to take hers. These words stayed with me. The birds probably love her as much as we do. I'm sorry you died in prison. You are forever flying free. The living conditions of the inmates of Yaros are good and constantly improving. Brigadier General Stylianos Patakos, Minister of Interior, 1967. Panayotis M., interviewed by Eleni Haji, November 1975. None of us quite believe what we saw. All the birds came down on top of her, started eating her flesh. No one reacted, not even the guards at that point. We all knew she belonged to them. Those of us who were lucky, we watched from our prison cells. Only a company of 2 was allowed to go to the beach. They said it was horrifying and majestic. From my tiny prison cell, it certainly was. Then the song started. A song to pierce your ears. Everyone could hear it, no matter how far their cell was. The guards tried to drive the birds away, but soon they were running away from the terrible noise. A huge bird I've never seen before, white and long neck like a swan, with the wingspan of an albatross, flew down and didn't stop singing until the birds had left nothing of her. Then, when all the other birds had flown away, the large swan-like bird dropped dead on the sand, and its carcass was left there for the sun to bleach. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. But several others say they saw the swan flying that very evening. And the day after. I can't tell. I never saw this bird again. I don't think they just ate her. I think she's with them now. Arriving from Yaros, I would like to express my warm thanks for the exceptional treatment and the excellent living conditions. Any claims to the contrary are all slander by the enemies of our country. I assure you that I will work tirelessly to support the work of our national government. Purported statement of a former Yaros inmate, September 6, 1967. Thalasini V. Transcription of her story as recorded by an anonymous inmate, April 1973. I don't think I'm as good as I used to be. You see, whenever I ask of my daughter, they never answer to me in human words. I can only hear the bird noises everyone else hears. I insist, and then they stop talking. This isn't new. Has been happening for a while now. But lately it's hard to listen to other talk too. Maybe I'm too old. Did you pick up any words on the waves? I ask, and they say nothing. Just broken pieces, syllables. I'm too old. I might die soon, and still no word of my child. I don't know. The birds don't know. There's nothing that the birds don't know. Birds can even travel to the underworld, you see. They can even speak of the dead. But never of my daughter. Is she alive? Is she dead? Maybe she is somewhere else entirely, a place where no soul ever treads. Maybe that was the only place she could be safe. Manuscript ends. Here the rats all gnaw even at the fairest earth. Aristotle on Yaros, quoted by Claudius Aelianus. Chisulake, diary excerpt, June 6, 1973. Today is my last entry. Today, I am released. I saw a swan flying over our heads this morning. If it's you, Kerathalasini, I thank you. Rome, Yaros, Athens, prison, one and the same. Epictetus. Savina M. Poem, 1981. Found in a diary of a girl from Kea Island, in which she supposedly collects messages she receives from birds. This is what the swans sing. Mother, I became a bird, so I could find you. But birds never speak of other birds. But I was too late. Too late.
And welcome back. Eliana sent us these notes on the story. This is a story taking place during the far-right military Greek junta, 1967 to 1974, featuring the most notorious of prisons for those resisting the regime, Yaros. There is an idyllic view of the numerous Greek islands, but history tells us that they have been traditionally used as places of exile, torture and imprisonment. The story is repeated with an offshore management of mixed migration flows at the moment, both in Greece and elsewhere in the world, where remote islands are used as prisons. I wanted to make a story about this, and about a few of the things that deeply affect my home to this day, although they are not widely known outside of it. Thank you, Eliana. This is not a comfortable story to hear, and that, I suspect, is its intention. The figure I found was that 22,000 people were imprisoned on Yaros between 1948 and 1974. Evidence of conditions on the island in that time was sufficiently damning that Greece was banned from the Council of Europe in 1969 for violating human rights. What makes it even more uncomfortable is that, as Eliana mentions, such island prisons still exist today, in Greece and elsewhere. Yaros itself has been closed down, but Greece still maintains 5 island camps, not for political prisoners, but for refugees. Within the last 2 years, the UN Refugee Agency described conditions as precarious, with alarming overcrowding, with as many as 36,000 asylum seekers living in centres originally designed for no more than 5,400 people. Other countries are guilty of similar. The conditions on Nauru and Manus Islands, where Australia processes asylum seekers, what a cold bureaucratic word, processes, for humans fleeing in terror, desperate for nothing more than the chance to survive. The conditions on those islands are infamous. The UK Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has floated the idea of using Ascension Island in the middle of the Atlantic to do the same, an 8,000-mile round trip to one of the most remote islands on the planet, just to keep refugees from setting foot on British soil. That is an astonishingly inefficient and unnecessary proposal grounded, and let us be frank, entirely in racism. As with so many policies from our current Conservative government, the cruelty is the point. So yes, this story is uncomfortable to hear, but that discomfort is a reminder, the smallest possible echo, of the privations visited upon the most vulnerable people in the world, who have committed no crime except to find themselves in the path of powers greater than themselves. So please, don't throw their stories and their letters into the sea to pretend it's not happening. Look, with both eyes open, and see what is happening around us today. The past and all its horrors are never very far away. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai Njeri Kagunda and Eleanor R. Wood, your assistant editor Sophia Barker and audio engineer Peter Adrian Berafesh, forum moderator Ossicat, and our many wonderful first readers Tierney Bailey, Aidan Doyle, Amelia Harrington, Kai Hudson, Craig Jackson, Devon Martin, Julia Patt, Hamilton Perez, Sri Krishna Prasad, Zeev Wheaties and Caitlin Zavanovich, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of Escape Artists Incorporated, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of Escape Artists do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EAPodcasts. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartist.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check out our sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, and Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction. If your heart belongs to us, though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.